Hey, this is Dominique.
And Keely.
And you are listening to Booktrospective. This week we are going to be reviewing Butcher and the Wren by Alaina Urquhart, which I'm very excited for because I'm a morbid girl. But before we do all that, let's check in. So, Keely, how's your week been?
Same old, same old. How about you?
It's been pretty good. I wasn't off this week from regular work, but I didn't have to be at the hospital early, so it felt like I was off. But yeah, so I had a pretty decent week. And tomorrow's my daughter's birthday, so I'm busy, but good. Okay, so Butcher and the Wren. So I said I was a morbid girl because if you don't know in the podcast world, which you should, Alaina is one half of Morbid, which is a true crime podcast, which I've been listening to them for. I probably found them like a year into their podcast journey, and they've been around for
a while.
Did they just have their 5th year anniversary? I think.
It feels about right.
Yeah, so it's been a while. Her cousin sister, if you listen to the show, then you know what that means, is the other half, Ash. So Alaina had been writing this book about that whole time, and so she finally published it, I want to say last year, and then the paperback had just come out, so I saw it on like a digital poster in the airport on my way back from New York earlier this summer, and I was like, ooh, I really want to read it. Well, I always really wanted to read it, but I was like, okay, I gotta get it. So I was excited, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm definitely a morbid girly too. I've not listened to anything here lately. I've really fallen off listening to podcasts. But I know, right? I know, right? But they're like, so I started off with Crime Junkie, and then I found Morbid and like dropped everything in my life to listen to them. Love them so much.
I do. I honestly my daughter asked me the other day, she said, can we please listen to music in the car? Because I found Doppelgangers, which is a podcast, and they have been doing Vampire Diaries. I think they're on season 6 now, and I just literally 2 days ago, just got caught up. So I just listened to 6 seasons of reviews. And my daughter's like, can we please listen to music? So when I find something, I do. I drop everything, and I have to get caught up. I can't do anything else, even though I was listening to or doing these books and all my other stuff. But I was like, I have to do it. So I get it. I'm bad.
We definitely, so Morbid is our family travel podcast. Oh yeah. So when we're on long drives, I'm like, okay, I'll queue up Morbid, and the whole family gets so into listening to that.
We tried that, but we went to Gatlinburg, and my mom wanted to listen to it because my mom does, but my they cuss and stuff. My grandma's like, why do they have to talk like this? My mom was like, you are fine. She was like, you are fine. You will be fine. That is the least disturbing part of everything that they're saying.
Right. I love how they kind of just mock the serial killers and stuff. Yes. My favorite episode of theirs was the BTK, series, yes. Just because...
There's new stuff out about him, too.
Oh, is there?
He, did he, tell himself some more? Something happened, and there was... I can't remember now, but there was something that happened where basically they dug up at his house and they found he had a hidey hole, which is what he called it.
Yeah, I hate when people say that now. Don't call it that.
It's such a cringy term. But they found stuff that's supposed to be related, possibly to a victim, and his daughter went to visit him for the first time because when he went to prison, his wife and kids completely cut him off, as they should. But yeah, so and he's like, can he not walk now? I don't know. I mean, he's getting I'm glad he's still alive. I feel like they go to prison and they die entirely too soon every time. I'm glad he's still alive because, yes, do your time. So there's some new stuff about him, but yeah, I love Alaina and Ash. I do them in spurts. I'll fall behind for a couple weeks, but I like to binge it, so I'll catch up with them. But yeah, so I was definitely excited for this book. So Keely's got our blurb.
Yes. Okay. So, this is a blurb for The Butcher and the Wren. Something dark is lurking in the Louisiana bayou. A methodical killer with a penchant for medical experimentation is hard at work completing his most harrowing crime yet, taunting the authorities who desperately try to catch up. But forensic pathologist Dr. Wren is the best there is, armed with an encyclopedic knowledge of historical crimes and years of experience working on the medical examiner's office. She's never encountered a case she couldn't solve. Until now. Case after case is piling up on Wren's examination table, and as soon as she's sucked into an all-consuming cat-and-mouse chase with a brutal murderer getting more brazen by the day. An addictive read with straight-from-the-morgue details only an autopsy technician could provide. The Butcher and the Wren promises to ensnare all who enter.
Okay. So we'll do our, like, one word. We're kind of going to do, like, a general spoiler-free summary review-ish thing. Mm-hmm. And then we'll give a warning. And then we'll jump into our... I'll do more of a in-depth, which I did see a comment, they were like, they do like when we talk about it, I'll try to pause. Again, you guys know, like I always say, sorry for the background noise, I always say that too. Again, we're downtown, but leave feedback, because we'll try to incorporate that. So we're just still like learning. Every time we meet up, I'm like, okay, this is different this time. I'm still trying to figure it out. So we'll do spoiler-free, then spoiler, and we'll talk about things. I'll try to pause to talk about things. I'm kind of getting different with my note taking and like putting my thoughts in my notes so that I like know to pause and talk about it and like slow down a little bit. But yeah, so if you could describe this book, how would you?
I have been thinking about this for a long time since I closed the book a couple days ago. So I mean, I would describe it as shocking.
Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
Let's see.
I feel like it's a little hard to, do a one word kind of.
It is. So the word I would have used, so I like to synonym because I'll come up with something I'm like, it's a better word out there. The word I'm going to use for this book is loquacious in a positive manner, which can mean like talkative, which it is. And I'm not saying that to be a bad thing. There's a lot of depth to this. Now, coming from like being, again, a morbid girl, like I know how Alaina is. And so I don't expect anything different from this book. But if you're not and you read this book, you would probably you could even feel like a little overwhelmed. So it is like, there's a lot of verbiage. There's a lot of things like that. I'm not only just like a reader, I'm medical too. So like that didn't bother me at all. So I think that kind of helps describe that a little bit.
Yeah, I completely agree. If you're not used to, Ash and Alaina, Alaina does get off into tangents sometimes. Yes. So that definitely comes through with the book. And like you said, not in a bad way, but it is very descriptive and like you can tell she put her heart into it.
She definitely did. And I looked at reviews for the book, and I mean, this is her first book. I'm not gonna ever write a book. I am not an author or a writer or an English professor or any of those things. So again, in no way, I'm not gonna judge someone on their work. This is, her passion project. I judge basically just off how the book makes me feel, not off of your style of writing or anything like that. I think, this is her baby, and I think she did a good job with it. So, just spoiler-free in general, this book follows, our main character is Wren, and it also follows our antagonist, who is Jeremy. And so it's very similar to the previous book. Well, not similar in the style as the previous book, which was Final Girls, where it was kind of flashbacks of memory, but this book does two POVs. So we are kind of going to see that in the synopsis I do, where we're kind of flashing back between these two characters versus present and past tense. So we follow both of them, and essentially Wren is a what is she? She's a medical examiner.
Yeah.
She's the coroner, actually. And so, which is funny because in real life, like in real life, you don't have to have any medical expertise to be a coroner. I always find that to be so funny.
Really?
Anybody can run for the coroner. Anybody can. Luckily, in most times, it is someone with a medical background. I don't know why you would want that job, but you don't have to.
That is crazy.
It's just an elected position. Which I don't know if in this case it is. This book takes place in New Orleans, in Louisiana. It doesn't say if she was elected, so I don't know. But so she is the coroner. She is she's a doctor. She's she has all her credentials as well. And so it does get a little confusing at a time. There's some crossover with a little bit of a past there. But she's her and her team. We have is he a sheriff or just like a police officer? Do they call him a sheriff? It's weird down there too because they have like parishes and stuff. Sometimes they have different terms, so it might be incorrect. I'm sorry, don't come for me. Essentially, he's like a sheriff, LaRue, and so that's kind of her team. And then there are some other like deputies and people that work with them. They are essentially tracking or finding all these bodies. They know that they're tracking a killer. So we also are following Jeremy and. I don't know. Is this a spoiler? Is it a spoiler to say he's the killer? I mean, that's kind of...
Yeah, I don't think so.
I don't know if that's a spoiler. I mean, like, it is. And so it would be more of a spoiler. You know, essentially, we follow the killer and we're following Wren. Jeremy is the killer. I don't think that's a spoiler.
Yeah.
I think you kind of get that
pretty
right
much,
off the bat.
Yeah, like page 2.
Yeah. Page 2, you, like, turn the page. Honestly, page 1, like, you're reading, you're like... You're strange.
Exactly, yeah.
So I don't think that's a spoiler. So we're kind of flashing back between these two until their paths cross, and they cross multiple times, essentially, and kind of seeing if they're able to catch the killer or if the killer is able to best them. So it's New Orleans, it's hot. We've got some jazz, we've got partiers, we've got bayous, we've kind of got gators. I mean, we don't get a gator attack, but we got animals mentioned. So that's kind of, I feel like, as spoiler free as I can get. So without further ado,
spoilers are ahead. Beware.
Beware. If you have not read this and you care about spoilers, then pause here, come back after you read it. If you do not care to be spoiled, then stick around, and I'm going to get out my notes here. I will, again, try to do a wonderful job keeping up with whose POV we are in, because it does go back and forth. So we actually start out with Jeremy. And I am going to be honest. I immediately started thinking of Jeffrey Dahmer. That's the first thought. Actually, not only did I start thinking of Jeffrey Dahmer, it made me think of the Evan Peters Jeffrey Dahmer series, because those were the vibes I was getting. So, yeah, that's just the vibe I got. If somebody has read this and you felt something different, please tell me. So we start with Jeremy. He's doing his nighttime routine. This man is OCD.
Yeah.
He's strange. And he's narcissistic. He's all of the wonderful makings of a serial killer. Mm-hmm. So he's in the bathroom doing his beauty routine. And we hear screaming coming from the vents. Like we said, I don't know if we're at the bottom of page 1 or if we've turned to page 2.
We're pretty close.
Yeah, so we know that something's going on. So he hears screaming, and like that angers him because the noise bothers him, which, you know what, I'm going to say, like, noise bothers me too. I get you, Jeremy. But he's also covered in blood. I did write down, I never write down, I was just telling Keely earlier, I never write down character descriptors, or I never, like, clock that when I'm reading for myself. I don't know, I have these ambiguous characters in my mind when I'm reading, and then I try to go fan cast when I'm done with the book, and I'm like, were they blonde? Were they black? Like, unless it's something that's very important that they talk about a lot, I completely blot that out. But I did write this down. So he is blonde. He has high cheekbones because he's literally, like...
obsessed with it. Like, he's proud.
Yeah. He loves himself. He thinks he's a Greek god. Yeah, he loves himself. He compares himself to this, like, corpse flower.
Yeah, which is weird.
Strange. And so he's like thinking to himself about, he's been going to the Tulane University School of Medicine, which again is down in Louisiana. He's thinking about a classmate. He has, her name's Emily, which we already, like, that's kind of a red herring for us. Like, Emily girl, get out of there. I guess they have biolab together. And he's kind of like, just kind of thinking of her as like the perfect specimen. He's like, oh, she doesn't eat junk, she works out, and he says she has stamina. And I'm concerned. And so he is also talking about how he has other guests, but those guests, like, he hasn't been prepping for the same way he has with Emily. But these other guests are Katie and Matt, who we'll come to find out is what's making the noise in the basement. He goes down to the basement because they're getting on his nerve. And Matt is telling, Matt and Katie are down there. We meet them. He talks horribly about them. He calls, like, Katie, like, trailer park trash. He's like, she has mousy brown hair. And he essentially pulls off her fingernail because she's crying, which, ow, I'm not going to stop.
Right. I'm going to cry more. Thank you very much.
Oh, my gosh. Matt is actually passed out, and they both are hooked up to IVs. And we get a little kind of like into his psyche here. He starts thinking about his dad, which essentially his dad was abusive to him, but he respects him. We always have these weird tropes with these serial killers.
The family dynamics are just like,
his mom cheated on his dad, but probably because his dad was abusive, but he has like, doesn't really seem to have respect for his mom, but he does respect his dad even though his dad was abusive. And so weird dynamics there, but his mom would go to the library to cheat with the librarian or whoever, and when he was there, he would steal books from the library. Specifically, he was learning about lobotomies as a child, and so that's why we are where we are today. He was actually looking, he mentions Dr. Walter Freeman, and he was learning about treating schizophrenia with lobotomies. So that's why his basement, he's kind of turned into this lab. He's already mentioned the IVs, and so we got to get the idea that he does these experiments in his laboratory down there. We already switch over to Wren, Dr. Wren Mahler. I'm just going to call her Wren. She's been called to the scene of a dead woman. She's out in the bayou, naked, pretty average woman. She was gutted in the stomach, found in only blue jean shorts. She tells us that 2 weeks earlier, they've found another woman behind a bar. Pretty similar scenario that they found these victims in. The previous victim was actually found with some pages from a book shoved down her throat, and all they could decipher from those was that one of the pages was titled with Chapter 7 on it. The Jane Doe that they have today appears that she was strangled as well. She's probably been dead for 10 hours. She's got a tattoo. She finds some clothing nearby, which she clocks as weird that there was things to find, because that's not like the usual with the victims they've been finding. They find inside of these clothes, there's a book, which is the Ghouls Anthology of Horror Tales. So all of these like little key clues throughout the book all start to come together later on. We quickly go back to Jeremy. He's out doing research. Katie and Matt Katie's passed out now because she's lost her fingernail. Now Matt's awake. But they're both also in these chairs that are like chained and bolted to the cement floor in the basement. And Matt's yelling at Jeremy. I don't know what he thinks he's going to do. Jeremy kisses him on the mouth.
Oh my God, this part.
I am terrified. He kisses him on the mouth and then bites his lip so it bleeds. I'm like, do you know how deranged you are?
When I read that part, I was like, what?
I had to write it down. I was like, ew. It gives me the creeps. So, yeah, he kisses him on the mouth, and then he just goes off to work. And this is what I always say when I listen to true crime. You never know who you're at work with. Can you imagine that you go to work with this guy? And he does have a co-worker we meet in a little bit. You go to work with this guy every day, and then, like, in a month, they go to jail or whatever, and you find out that day before he came to work, he had people in his basement. He kissed them on the mouth.
It feels like, I read that part, and it felt like something that would come straight out of like Stephen King's It or something like
Ooh.
yeah.
Ugh, he's disgusting. He's so disgusting. And he also, like, he's such a narcissist. Like, on his way to work, like, he gets to work, he's just condescending to everyone. He hates everyone. He's so smart. Like, everyone's just trash. Like, the lady that works at the desk is, like, pathetic. Just, that's how he is. He's just, he's the greatest God's gift to earth, I swear. So we're back with Wren. She is at the morgue with the Jane Doe. She's describing a lot of the things that are wrong with the Jane Doe. She's got hemorrhaging on the face. She's got ligature markings. She can tell basically like this patient Jane Doe. I'm so used to saying patient at work, sorry. She can tell that the body, like, they were strangled, but they weren't strangled to death. So, like, this person was purposely, like, strangled, but not to die. Like, it was pleasure for the killer. They were stabbed while they were still alive, and it appears like she had been moved after death because of how the body, all those big terms that, that's outside of the realm of what we need to talk about, but the lividity of the body, the coloring of the body, and the skin. So, she's actually thinking that this Jane Doe was put in the refrigerator, and so she kind of talks about how she thinks that the killer's like playing with her to mess up the being able, all those things play into being able to figure out like time of death, location, and so if you put someone in the refrigerator after they die, they're not going to deteriorate as fast as if they were just laying out in a room. So all of that plays with the time of death. We go back to Jeremy. He's actually looking up an article about the fact that Katie and Matt are missing and they're in his basement. People are holding a vigil for them, and he thinks that is ridiculous, and he thinks it's only for, like, the people, not actually for Katie and Matt, because, again, he's a narcissist. But, hey, he's not the only one, because then here comes his coworker, who also is a sadistic narcissist, and he's like, Jeremy's testing him, because he's like, look, I literally put, I think it's crazy how you never know who you're working with. The coworker and him start talking about all the other bodies, and Jeremy tells us, like, in his mind, like, yeah, those are all his bodies. They found, like, a previous Jane Doe, which he says her name was Megan. He says he normally never likes to overlap them, but, he's kind of doing something new. The Megan that they had found, he had left the bar with, and I guess she called him a mama's boy, which we know he does have mommy issues. And so he, like, basically, like, tried to, like, mentally break her, and so he just let her sit in his basement, and so she never knew when he was coming to kill her, which, again, also, he's messed up. Yeah. He says he normally targets people, like, in their 20s and 30s outside of the bars and clubs, which, again, New Orleans is perfect for that, because that's the perfect party scene for that. But he's just, like, curious, and he's just trying new things. Like he's trying a new food. But Corey is the coworker's name, and he's basically like, yeah, I think Katie and Matt are goners. They've been missing for more than a week. Jeremy's like, same. And Corey's like, yeah, I'm sick of the vigils. They're stupid. They, like, have a wonderful bonding moment. It's disgusting. Wren, we go back to Wren. She realizes, like, the killer's messing with the time of death. And we meet, I can't remember if we met him initially, but LaRue is the detective that is working with her. He believes that the killer is leaving clues, and that's kind of like what the pages were, the book that they found. And they actually compare him to BTK and how he kind of had told on himself with the floppy disk because he was, like, thirsty for the attention. Because essentially, if you don't know, BTK never would have got caught if he hadn't missed the attention he was getting, and so he reached out to the police and was sending them information, and he said, hey, if I send you guys a floppy disk, would you be able to track it? And they were like, no, of course not. Yeah, okay. Right. They tracked it to his church. Now he's in prison.
I like that they added that bit of information about BTK. But
yeah, it's nice. They hate Alaina and Ash hate Dennis Rader. They're like, BTK, that's the dumbest name ever. Bind, torture, kill.
And then I love that they started calling him Bumblebutt, and I'm like, that is the funniest thing.
LaRue tells them that the book that they had found was actually checked out by a man named Philip Trudeau, but it was last checked out, like, over 20 years ago, and until, like, 3 days ago, it had been in the library. But we know that Jeremy said that when he was growing up, he used to steal books from the library. So, like, we can put that together. We don't know who Philip Trudeau is, but he lives in Massachusetts. He hasn't lived in Louisiana for, like, 20 years. So, not really sure about that. We kind of flash back to, or not really flashback, we jump over to Jeremy for just a second, which he basically just tells us that he first liked to kill or learned to kill because his dad hit a deer or found a deer that was injured and brought it home to take it out of its suffering, and that excited Jeremy. Again, he's a serial
Creeper.
killer. Yeah. He's a serial killer. What are we going to say? So back to Wren. She feels like she knows who this Philip Trudeau is for some reason. But she goes home. She's making coffee, trying to think it over. We are introduced to her husband, Richard. He's not very important in this novel. But she's just really just kind of stuck with the killer's figuring, like, he's playing with her because she's trying to figure him out. And we jump back over to Jeremy. He's heading to the school. So again, he's going to Tulane, or at least we think he's going to Tulane Medical School as an actual student. I think he's like listening to their radio. They're talking about a girl that was found dead again behind a bar. And he's just kind of being a creep again, talking about the pleasure he gets from being able to, from killing people, and how being an autopsy tech is just like not enough to like get that experience. Again, he's a creep. Wren actually has a nightmare that night about being caught by the murderer. They found another body, so she's just feeling more stress, more pressure. They've actually found two people. They found a 23-year-old male or female, and they found a 56-year-old male. Both of those they actually don't think are related to the killer, but you just never know. So she's just got bodies piling up. She goes out to the scene, and her and LaRue actually find this business card that wasn't there at the time, like, they were called out to the scene. And it's actually one of her old business cards. She said she had her business cards updated like 6 months ago. So this is a card that somebody's gotten at least 6 months ago, and it wasn't there like an hour ago. So whoever put it there has been out there watching them. So she knows that somebody's watching them. So they're like, okay, well, we'll have somebody, like, we'll put a deputy on you or whatever, and, the killer's watching her. So Jeremy's back at the school. He's stalking Emily, like he introduced us to her in the first chapter. She calls him Cal. I initially thought this was a fake name, but we do find out later that either Cal's his middle name or it's short for something. I think I wrote it down later in my notes, and I might get to it. But it's not actually a fake name. It's his middle name. But she just knows him as Cal. So he walks her to the car, to her car in the parking garage, and he basically he has like a ring on his finger that he's pulled a prong off so that he can use it to stab this bottle of chloroform, and he uses it on her, and she passes out. He puts her in the trunk, and what is that? Oh, he also injects her with ketamine, and he notices she has a bracelet. The bracelet does come back. It's pretty important. She has like a little charm on it. She has a charm, an E-charm, and then also a heart because they're a medical school. So he zip ties her and drives her car home. And we also realize that he has been dyeing his hair brown when he's been going to classes with her. So she knows him as Cal, and he has brown hair when she has seen him. We go back to Wren, and she is supposed to go out with her friends, but she's trying to talk herself out of it just because, one, she hates to go out. Two, she's got a lot of work stuff going on. But her husband's like, no, you should go. So she goes out with her friends. I think it's like Lindsay, Debbie, Jenna. There might have been some other ones. She only allows herself to have one drink because, unfortunately, and this is true in real life, she's the coroner, so she's on call 24/7. Again, why does anybody want that job? I don't know. Especially if you don't know medicine. Why would you want that job? I don't understand. So while they're there, Lindsay's like, oh, let's go to a fortune teller. Always a bad idea. I don't know. So they go to this place called the Bottom of the Cup, and they see there's actually two psychics there. One of them is named Martine, which is the one that Wren ends up seeing. And she asks if they can, Martine asked if she can record it, and Wren was like, sure. She actually asked Wren that, but before they do the cards, if she can give her a palm reading as well. And so on Wren's palm, Martine tells her she notices the Ring of Solomon, which indicates that she's strong, independent, intelligent, but that like work and success really kind of run her life, and that she's stifling her creative impulses. And then she also notices a line across the middle of her palm, which is the Simeon line, and it basically tells her she's having like a hard time viewing life in an abstract way. She only sees things in black and white, and that's probably hurting something that's currently going on in her life. And so then they move on to the tarot cards, and, Wren pulls the cards out. She pulls out the moon and the high priestess. the moon is basically indicating that she needs to listen to her inner voice. She's blocking messages. And the high priestess card is basically saying that she has secrets surrounding her, that there's someone in her life now or in the past that has a secret that she doesn't understand. And then lastly, she pulls another card, which is the Ten of Swords, and it's a man with 10 swords in his back if you've never seen it, and it indicates betrayal. So, like, at this point, I just want to pause. At this point, I'm like, okay, so is it the husband?
Right. Because it's like, always the husband.
Right, because I was like, okay, so obviously Jeremy is a serial killer, but I'm like, is it the husband or the detective? Or I was like, is it LaRue?
Mm-hmm.
So, because I'm like, okay, this isn't making any sense.
I was like, it has to be somebody close to her, right?
Right, I was like, okay, so if it's that, I'm like, then what does Jeremy have to do with any of this? It was not making sense to me, so I was like, okay. So she leaves. She's, obviously that rubbed her the wrong way. So she goes back. I can't remember if she went back to the same bar or she goes to a different bar, and she runs into LaRue and Will, which is his partner. And there's basically like some satanic panic going on, which is something else. That's another big episode that Ash and Alaina have done, which is the Memphis 3, the West Memphis 3, which is a big case where like 3 little boys were found murdered, and they blamed it on these 3 kids that were, actually only one of them really was like into like gothic stuff, and I think they lived in the Bible Belt, and so they do this whole satanic panic, which is like, oh, you listen to devil music and you wear black clothes, and that makes you want to kill people, which we know is not true. And so that's like another big episode, big thing that Alaina and Ash are known for. So I like to see like those things.
Yeah, tie into
their book. Yeah. So of course, when they're at the bar, there's a TV on, and it's like a pastor or something, and they're pushing the satanic panic thing on the news. And there's also this jazz festival coming up because it's almost Mardi Gras season. And LaRue realizes that the paper that the jazz festival poster is on it's like an iridescent type paper, and it's the same material that was the paper that was shoved down the lady's throat, which is the first body that we started with.
Yes.
And so he thinks that that's like an indication, like, oh, there's going to be something at the jazz festival, because he's the one that said he's leaving us clues, or the killer's leaving us clues. So we go back to Jeremy, and this is where we really finally see him become unhinged. So Emily wakes up on a monitor. She is out in the bayou or whatever, and I probably would have just died on the spot.
I would have been like, okay, this is it.
There's first of all, it's dark. There's water moccasin snake. I don't know. You got kidnapped, drugged. There's creatures crawling. It's wet. He's watching her, and he goes on the speaker, and he says, and there's other people he says, and they're in the swamp, and he basically says that she has to avoid being caught by him, and if she can avoid being caught, then she'll get away. And he can tell, because he's watching her too, that she recognizes his voice, she knows it's him. And each person has a flashlight, and that she looks down, she sees the snakes, and then he starts, this is something else that they always say on Morbid, he starts blasting music, and all the time, Alaina and Ash are always like, how horrifying is it? Whenever they do cases, they'll be like, the victim will say, if somebody gets away, they'll be like, he played this music all loud, and they're always like, how horrifying is it to die and this person was playing this music? So it's funny that they did that too. So he starts blasting music, and so they're just supposed to run through this bayou, and of course he gave them Dollar Tree and flashlights. They did not, and so he has night vision goggles on, and of course we flash over to Wren real fast, so we'll get into that in just a second. Wren is still with LaRue. We find out he actually has a boyfriend. I was shocked. I was
too. I was okay.
I was pleasantly surprised. His boyfriend's a chef. I was like, okay, it's very irrelevant.
I mean, I was having a little crush on him, but I mean,
I know,
okay.
I like this. It's very irrelevant. I just wanted to mention. But they're still talking about the Jazz Fest. They actually think it's going to be just a body drop, which is what, they can tell that the killer's not killing these people at the scene. He's just dropping the bodies. So they're trying to figure out what they can do to catch him. Obviously, they don't want to cancel the event. They don't, because they want him to come, but they can't, be just, posted up. He's not going to show up. So they're trying to figure that out. Wren doesn't believe that they're going to catch him. Like, she doesn't think this is going to work. But, hey. So, we're going to Jeremy. He's got music playing, which I wrote these songs down. I don't know them, but if you know them, the first song I think it said was David Bowie, Surfer Jet City. Never heard of it. I'm going to have to play it. Maybe it's terrifying. He's carrying a hunting knife. Like I said, he's got night vision goggles. Like, he's
nightmare fuel.
He is a creep. Oh my God. He's a creep. And so he says that his family stifled his creativity and he long ago freed himself of his mother. Which I wrote, what does that mean? And I know what that means now because when you finish the book,
yeah.
you know. But I put in capital letters, what does that mean? What do you mean you freed yourself of your mom? Which, what do you guys think that means? So, I had to laugh. He is, nightmare fuel.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would just die. I want my fear to take over and just stop my heart. So they start running. Eventually, so we find out that Katie and Matt are also out there with Emily. Emily and Katie end up running into each other. He shoots Katie in the knee, and what he wants is for Emily to leave Katie. And Emily's a good person. Like, she doesn't want to leave her, but Katie is, like, pathetic.
Yeah. Like, definitely somebody I don't want to be.
Yeah, I don't want to be, like, fighting for my life with this girl, because she's like, oh, I just can't. I'm not going to make it. And
Emily's better than me, because I would have been like, I would have tripped her and ran.
I mean, when she got shot, I'd have been like, I just would have kept going. You know what? So Emily's really trying hard not to, and something happens, and I think my notes got messed up here, because they also end up running into Matt, and literally they see Matt. Katie is trying to run to Matt. As they're running, Jeremy in the dark shoots Matt in the head, and it, like, splatters over Katie's face. Okay. And he ends up catching Katie too, and he slices her throat. Like, it's bad. So he ends up chasing Emily to, like, an electric fence. She doesn't know it's electric, you know, because he said, if you can outrun me, you'll get away. So she tries to climb it, and she gets shot. And then he puts, like, these drops in her eyes to, like, blur her vision. Plus, he gave her that, like, ketamine. Like, she's all messed up. And then his goal was to paralyze her. He wasn't very good at this point, but he stabbed her he's trying to stab her in her lumbar spine. So your spine has cervical, thoracic, then lumbar. So it's your, like, mid to lower back. And so that she could be paralyzed but not die. And so he didn't do it just right, but she's laying there basically just waiting to die. We go over to Wren for a second, and this is out of order. Okay. I mean, I know what happened, but okay. So we go over to Wren, and they have this whole thing set up for the jazz festival. Essentially, at the jazz festival, it does end up being a body drop, and that's funny too. Wren, like, has a nose for death. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like, she has, like, not students, but maybe, like, new techs with her, and she'll be like,
she has a super sniffer.
She'll be like, can you smell that? And they're like, the French fries? I don't know. Like, and, like, she's like, no. And, like, she'll start, like, walking, and, like, you could tell people were, like, starting to smell it. And then, like, they'll start seeing the flies. And essentially there was a body under one of the stages. So they get down there. It's, is it Katie? No, this is somebody. Oh, because that's a different time. Yeah, this is when the time starts getting with me. It starts messing me up a little bit. But there's a body under there, and was she dying or already dead? Because I feel like she wasn't all the way dead when he put her under there. Is kind of what they were saying. I don't know. I feel like somewhere in there.
No, I think at some point it mentions that she wasn't.
I think she dies under the stage. But I think when they found her, she was already dead. Yeah. So they find a female under there, but she has an Apple Watch on. I want to say it was an Apple Watch, and it's like new, like
brand
clean.
New.
And so they're able to get in it. How did they get the code again?
She found the map.
Yeah.
Of the St. Louis cemetery. And there was a plot.
Yeah.
Of one of the plots.
Yeah. So she on the Apple Watch there's a timer. So essentially he's leading them to a cemetery, the St. Louis Cemetery, which if you've ever been to New Orleans or you know anything about it, that's one of the most popular cemeteries there, where you can go and tour it. When I went down there recently, you couldn't tour it; it was closed. But that's where they film a lot of movies. So if you've ever seen movies in New Orleans where they have like the chase scenes and everything down there, or like the originals was filmed down there, all those in the cemetery, that's St. Louis Cemetery 1. And so there's a plot there that's marked, and there's a timer. So she essentially runs like, oh, there's somebody buried and we need to get there. Mm-hmm. Like, she's putting that together. So we go, or no, because my notes are out of order, sorry. So they actually do get to that plot, and they find like another like little egg timer like the ones you have on your stove, and they like all just start like digging, and they have no like idea how deep down or anything, like they have no idea what's going on, but they start digging, and they do find Emily, and she's like very still, she's bloody, she's thrown up, she's barefoot, and they literally find her like right before the timer goes out, which probably indicated when her air was going to run out, or I don't know, and yeah, so they don't know if she's even going to live, and Wren kind of like felt like she was like defeated, but it's better than nothing than like not finding them. Right. So Jeremy wakes up the next day like he is having a good day. Like he was well rested. He's like, doo-doo-doo. So he is telling us like he left Emily. This is where it gets a little confusing, so you kind of have to stick with me. So he's like, oh, he left her laying out in the bayou all night, and he goes out there to find her, and she's not out there. And then he sees what he thinks is her, like, propped up against the fence, but what he realizes is it's Katie. And so what happened was that she actually got out. So she used Katie's body to absorb the shock of the fence, and she was able to get through. So he's pissed. That when they're still at the cemetery, Wren is with the girl, they realize like the casket lid had like scratch marks on it.
I think a fingernail embedded or something.
Yeah, like it is being buried alive. That's bad. They had like all the things in this book that were bad. And so that like even if she does make it, they're like, I don't even know if this girl's gonna be able to remember anything. I mean, it was a bad scene. We go back to Jeremy, and this is a day after they've dug up Emily. He's now at the cemetery. He's actually at Marie Laveau's gravesite. Again, if you know anything about New Orleans, she's like a very famous person from down there. He like broke the camera to get in there because he's a criminal. He also like is just basically telling us he was at the Jazz Fest, and he noticed like when they found the body there as well. We go back to Wren. She tells us that unfortunately Emily did go into respiratory distress at the hospital, and she basically suffocated from her stab wound and ended up dying. And she also tells us that she was poisoned with hemlock. It looks like it was given to her through an IV, and that's actually what killed her. So it's a really bad poison, and it's also a very rare poison. Mm-hmm. And Wren notices this bracelet that Emily was wearing, and it has it's that bracelet that we talked about that has the heart on it. And Wren recognizes the bracelet. She says it belonged to Emily Maloney, and she says that it belonged to her. So I'm like, what? Yeah. So
leading up to there was really confusing until this
point
revelation. Yes.
So it will get a little bit more clear here in just a second. So we go back to Jeremy after this revelation, and Jeremy tells us it's been 7 years on his plan to come back, and it's falling apart. He's, basically telling us he's been leaving these clues for people, for these certain people. He's trying to trigger memories from his case. He tells us that the pages that were shoved down the one Jane Doe's throat were from the book The Dangerous Game. He tells us Emily had gotten away years ago. So we actually find out that this whole thing with Emily and the chase and the bayou thing, that was years ago. He's basically coming back now to kind of like finish or get his revenge. Jeremy says he was actually there when they dug her up, and he was pissed that she was not dead. And he's losing it. And now he compares himself to Socrates, and the hemlock tea and having to like walk around till he died. Like narcissist. Wren tells us that she basically renamed herself Wren because Wren signifies rebirth, protection, immortality, strength. Wrens are like small birds. They're known for like outwitting their predators, and that's why she chose that name for herself 7 years ago when she was Emily Maloney. She was working to become a doctor. She was drugged, kidnapped, stabbed, and left for dead in the bayou. And she used to blame herself for basically missing all the signs when it came to him. She said she laid on that ground for hours waiting for him to come back and kill her. And then finally she did what he said. She used Katie's body to get out of the fence. And she said she like ran for what felt like miles. She calls LaRue and she tells him all the information that she has, all these things about him, and she's now doing her exam on Emily's body because again she did pass away in the hospital. He arrives and they discuss the killer, and she's telling him like about the controlled hunt on the private land, and she admits that she was Emily. He tells us that his father actually was working that case prior to him, and he had told him about her, and she says he was the only person that believed her when she had came into the precincts when she had been running all that time. She tells us that Jeremy's hair was brown when she met him, and she still only knows him as Cal. Mm-hmm. She never found out what his real name was. And she said that he used to talk about his mom in class and said that she was really sickly. He loved her house, and she was saying that this is probably the property where he's taking these bodies to. She realizes that she did recognize that name, Philip Trudeau, and that it was an old friend of Jeremy's. And she also does remember that Katie called him Jeremy that night when they were in the bayou. And so she does ask for another tech to take over looking at Emily's body because it's really just too much for her. Now, also, this is where I have to take a pause because this is where I was not happy. So all this happens, like, does her husband know any of this?
Right.
They never mention if he knows it. She doesn't go home and, like, tell him. There is a murder on the loose.
Right.
Like, and he's just, like, out, and we're going to get to that in a second, but, like... alarms, like there's nothing.
Right, and I think they only mention her husband like what, twice?
Yeah, like that
in the book?
Yeah, the night she goes out with her friends, and then like the first night when she like, comes home. Like that's it. And well, I mean, and when they're asleep that time. But like, yeah. So plot hole. So we go back to Jeremy, and he's still pissed off. He's still mad that Emily. The second Emily, not Wren, was not dead when they dug her up. So essentially, he found another Emily, and he's doing this to get to Wren. He knows who she is and all of that, and he's trying to trigger her. So now he's looking for a new victim. So he goes to a bar. He sees a woman. Again, he's condescending. He sees this woman. She's in like a strapless dress. He's basically like, oh yeah, she's looking to get chose. We find out her name is Tara. She's actually a new law grad, but she just lost her first job. So she's having a bad day. She's about to have a real bad day. And unfortunately, like she does drugs, which, hey, whatever. I'm not here to yuck your yum. And she agrees. He basically is like, hey, do you want to come home and do drugs with me? And she's like, yeah. So, use those lawyer instincts, girl. I know it's new. I know, but something, come on. So she agrees to go with him, and he drives them deep into the dark bayou, and is like, oh, let's take a walk. Absolutely not.
Alarm bells.
And her alarm bells were going off, but she was ignoring. She was turning them off. She was snoozing them. They go out there and sit on a bench, and she, like, goes to kiss him, and he pulls out a knife, and he's like, run.
And she was like, huh?
She was like, what?
I'm like...
And he's like, run!
I would have been gone.
So and she's like, this is not funny. He's like, I'm not joking. And so she is running. He starts chasing her. He is throwing rocks at her. He ends up catching up to her, but he obviously didn't like plan any of this. And he just assumed because his dad used to take him hunting here that nobody would be out here. And there's actually 2 hunters. And so they're like, hey, like what's going on? And so he panics and he slices her throat, drops her, and he takes off. And he's like, I'm going to have to get out of town. Like, he's doing what serial killers do. Like, they spiral. They, like, lose it. They start to lose it. So we go back to Wren, and we find out LaRue has gotten a call about the new victim, which is Tara, but she is not dead. because he sucks. She's alive and conscious, actually. And so they go to the hospital to try to talk to her. The doctor tells us, she was found by 2 hunters and her throat was slashed and she can't speak, which we assumed she wouldn't, but she did write on a piece of paper, Jeremy. And they also get the receipt from the bar she was at earlier. Jeremy, we go back to him. He's watching the news about Tara. He's pissed. He is he woke up in a good mood. He just knew he was going to have a good day. And he did not. He's mad at himself. He's like, I should have followed my normal protocols. He wants to run, but, he just can't, leave without wrapping up. He can't let Wren go. He just can't let it go. So he goes down to his basement. He's, running his fingers along things. He's reminiscing. And he opens his freezer. He's got a woman in there. And he actually repeated the whole, spinal stab thing, but this time he knew what he was doing 7 years later. He also tried to lobotomize her, and he does not know how to do that. The lady, has blood all, ugh.
The details of that just...
Ugh. Oh, my. Lobotomies, I'm glad that didn't stick around. That is a horrible, horrible thing to do to someone. He unplugs the fridge, because he knows, they're coming for him. They're going to figure it out. So he's like, I'm going to unplug this and let her stink up my house. And he leaves. He also leaves, his weapons unlocked, because he's ready to play a game. Do you want to play a game? He's a creep. Go to Wren for a second. They go to the bar owner's house to try to get info about Tara from the night before. Wren stays in the car. I don't even know why she's doing this. Girl, pack your bags. Get out of here.
Right.
But the bar owner, he basically, he'll call some workers in to try to get some information. But they also get a call at the station that there was some witnesses or a possible witness. We go over to Jeremy again. He is standing at the edge of Wren's property line, watching her.
Sigh.
So he's been watching her for God knows how long. He knows that when she goes home, she turns all the lights on. He knows where her favorite spot is to sit at. He knows her routine. He knows she double checks the locks. But he also knows that it was her husband's responsibility to secure the basement, and he did not do that. And there's only there's a window down there that's painted shut. So he breaks into this window in the basement, and he knows what room she sleeps in, so he spends 2 hours going up the stairs because they creak. And he sits outside of her, or no, he doesn't sit out of her, no, he does sit outside.
Yeah.
He sits outside of her door for an hour, and he's just I feel powerful. Oh, it's so creepy. I don't know. See, now I'm torn because, as a kid, I hated to sleep with my door open. But now as a mom, I don't sleep with my door closed. And I'm almost glad because, are you going to be sitting on the other side?
Oh, see, I cannot sleep with my door open, but I think it's just a horror movie
someone's
person.
Standing there.
I am terrified. I'll open my eyes and somebody's just standing in my doorway.
Bad news.
I'd rather not
Sometimes my kids are standing there and it's terrifying. But yeah, I don't. So he sits there for an hour. Then he goes into her room and he just again, her and her husband are there. He just stands and breathes over them, and then he steals her grandmother's ring. She doesn't ever wear it, and so I guess she used to mention it when they were in school together. And he's like, "I'm not gonna kill her because he wants her to know it was him." So he takes the ring and he leaves. Again, why are you staying at home? Why did your husband not know?
And didn't they say something about putting
security? Where's the security? I would be checking every, okay, I know you've already done all this, but, once you know that who it is, I'm not staying. I'm staying at the police station.
Yeah. Clear on a cell from me. I'm gonna make myself at home.
What's wrong? Crazy. Just, I don't
getting a dog or something.
An alarm.
Booby trap, Home Alone it,
I don't understand. So, we go back to Wren's POV. She's been trying to remove herself from the case, but she keeps remembering more stuff about the case. She now remembers an older woman who came into the ER a few years ago. The woman had dementia, and she came with her son, and the son said that she had had previous suicide attempts, and he believed she may have ingested something, and shortly after this, she dies. And she remembers that this woman actually had hemlock mixed in with her wine, which... Emily had hemlock, and so Wren believes that this was Jeremy's mom. We learned that the lady's name was Mona Louise Rose, and her son's name was Jeremy Calvin Rose. Okay, I knew I wrote it down. I couldn't remember if it was actually Cal or Calvin. So Jeremy Calvin Rose. We also learned that they have spoken with Philip Trudeau and that he did know Jeremy. Someone from the bar came in and said they saw the guy leave with Tara. They don't know much about him, but they did recognize his smile because he's a creep and it probably creeped him out. So Wren asks to go to Jeremy's house because they've located it now. LaRue tries to talk her out of it, but of course, like, we know she's going. Why? I don't know. And Wren basically tried to use the argument. She's like, there's going to be bodies there. Like, you need the coroner. Like, whatever. Her husband doesn't want her to go, but she just feels like she has to go, so she's going. Jeremy's back at the farmhouse, at his house. Like, he's punching the living room and smearing blood everywhere, and he like takes the ring out and places it in the middle of his like dining room or living room table. We're back with Wren. They're at the police station. They get the arrest warrant. The bartender was able to identify Jeremy, so they're headed out to his house. I was gonna look up the address. It's 35 Evangeline Road. I was like, I'm gonna look it up. I might later. So they like send in some officers before just to make sure there's no ambush. They're like, nope, it's perfectly fine. Wren can smell death. That's what I wrote. She can smell death. It stinks. So she already knows, like, there's at least one body. And she goes in and she sees her ring. So she knows he's been in her, not only in her house, he's been in her room. She says she doesn't wear it because, like, it's too small, but it's just, like, a comforting thing. And she knows, like, it couldn't have been gone, like, more than a couple days. So, because she hasn't slept in her bed in days. So she knows he's been in there. She also notices, like, there's blood and glass, which we know he did that, but he wanted her to think, like, something recent had happened. So they go down to the basement and they find the girl in the freezer, which is what he wanted. They see the chairs that are like bolted and chained and rusty and coated in blood. They actually end up going back upstairs and we start to hear music again, which we know is a bad sign. So this time Jeremy's playing Black Magic by Bad Woods. Again, never heard of it. And they go out into the bayou and they smell more death and the music gets louder. And all of a sudden someone gets shot in the side of their head. I don't know why they weren't expecting that. What did you think was out there? You're looking for a serial killer. I don't know. I would have been more prepared. So he gets shot. And then all of a sudden, LaRue gets shot in the calf with a hunting arrow. And so then creepily out of the bushes, Jeremy walks out and all he says is, Emily. And he's like holding a crossbow at her. She grabs LaRue's gun and aims it at him, and he like drops the bow, but she can't shoot it. She's like frozen. And so Will shoots him because that's LaRue's partner. And so she shoots him right in the chest, and he, like, drops down and, like, rolls out of view. And then they chase after him, and we hear 2 more gunshots, and then we hear them, like, calling for her, and they're like, hey, we just need you to come identify him. So she goes back there, she finds him, his eyes are open, there's blood all over his face, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, that was... I'm
too
like,
easy.
Yeah, I'm like, what? This feels real anticlimactic. So I'm like... So she's like, something's not right. And so she like looks, and then she lifts up his shirt and there's nothing there. And I just said, like, he got shot in the chest. And she's like, this is not Jeremy. So she yells for Will and she's like, this is not him. And she's like, there's no gun either. Like, where's the gun? Like, if he shot himself, the gun would be here. She's like, he set this up. This is not him. So she gets in the ambulance with LaRue and she's telling them about Jeremy. And we flash back to Jeremy, and he escaped. He was wearing a bulletproof vest, and now he plans to run, and he knows that Wren hates him, but he doesn't think that she would ever be able to kill him. And that is where we end, and I was pissed.
Honestly, I thought that when they got in the ambulance, I was like, oh, no. Yes!
I was like, he's going to be in the ambulance! He's going to be the driver!
And when I found out he wasn't, I was like, oh, dang it.
That's why I was like, what? No! Where's the rest?
Like, I didn't want him to be the driver, but at the same time, I was like, that would make it real good.
Yeah, I was like, okay, is there a part 2?
I'm like, now it's going to be, you know, Emily/Wren and LaRue, and they're going to have to...
He's going to, like, drive him to some... Yeah, and he's injured, and she can't... Oh my gosh, I was underwhelmed. I was like, what? Where is this a cliff? I don't know.
There's gonna be a sequel.
Okay.
Yes.
I was like, what? What? I was not prepared for that. I was not prepared. Now, I'm not saying I didn't like the book. I did. That's why I was pissed off, because I was like, what? Where's the rest of it? So, yeah. So that's Jeremy. He has all the wonderful makings of a serial killer. And, yeah, I need the second one. I don't know when it's going to come out. I'm hurt.
Yeah, I was very upset. Like, I was like, okay, this is going to start getting really good.
Yeah.
And then it was over, and I was like,
I know, then it just ended.
Seriously?
I was like, what? What? Quoi?
So,
Okay.
how would you rate this book?
I'll give it a 4 out of 5. Only because I was like, what? I felt like there was a lot of, like, build.
Mm-hmm.
And so, which I don't know. I don't know if there was ever any mention that there was going to be a part 2 or anything. I don't know. But, I mean, I enjoyed the book. I enjoyed it. I do say, like I said in the beginning, it can be wordy. I think for, like, other people, that could be an issue. Or it could be, like, hard to follow. But I mean, I liked Wren. I like Jeremy. I think he's a good serial killer. I just wanted more.
I completely agree with your 4 stars. That's what I rated it too. I really enjoyed it, but I wish there was more. At first, it was a little wordy, and I was like, it's okay. It was okay enough. It felt a lot like a CSI or Criminal Minds episode. And then when we hit the twist where Wren was actually Emily, I was like, okay, yes.
Yeah.
But I wish there was more. And like you said, there was a lot of build up. And, you know, there was that climax, but it just, yeah. There should have been more.
I know, I'm like, just something. I don't know. I was hurt. I wanted that.
So, there's a dual timeline as well as a dual POV, and I feel like that kind of, added to a little bit of confusion on my part until it was revealed that Emily
that
and
one
Rem are the same
midsection
person.
gets really confusing. Because it's like they're digging up Emily, but then she's running.
Yeah,
that gets confusing.
So, did you think that, as a whole, the dual POV and timeline worked well or poorly? What did you think about that?
I mean, I liked it. It does. I mean, it gets confusing, but I mean, it makes sense when you come out of it. Like, I don't think that I would change it.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think it was really confusing at first, but once you hit that point where you're starting to put the pieces together, it makes sense.
Yeah.
So, we kind of talked about our thoughts on the ending of the book and how we wish there was more. So, Alaina did say that there's going to be a sequel. Would you read the sequel?
Yes, because I need to... Well, I need to know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
same.
Yeah, I need to know what happens. This is her first book, so... Kudos to her for that. I think she did a really good job, so I'm curious to know. Hopefully... I don't want to say hopefully there's not a third book, but I'm like, hopefully that one wraps it up so that I can get it all in one book. So I can feel fulfilled. But yes, I would.
And, so, I loved LaRue. I loved Wren. I think Wren was a great character. Jeremy was a great character, too.
Yeah,
great serial killer. But I don't know. I loved LaRue. Who was your favorite character?
Honestly, I do like Jeremy. I mean, he's like disgusting. He's a serial killer, but I do like his character. I think he's like a good serial killer, which I'm not surprised that she wrote a good serial killer.
Yeah, the characters, I wish there was more, background, into the characters, but she did really well, I think, developing them.
Yeah.
And getting us to kind of really like them.
Yeah.
So I really, really like that. And speaking of characters, who would you cast in The Butcher and the Wren.
Okay, so, again, I can never remember what these people look like, so forgive me if they're not exactly that. But, okay, so for Wren, I think she should be, like, mid-30-ish. I'm thinking, like, Aaliyah Pipes, so that would be, if you ever watched the original, that would be Cammie.
Okay.
I think I could see her.
Okay.
Like, she'd give me, like, medical examiner. I think she could give me that. And then for Jeremy, so I said in the beginning he gave me, like, Evan Peters, Jeffrey Dahmer, but instead of Evan Peters, more like a Ross Lynch, because I feel like he's, like,
I
taller
thought that
and
for a minute,
skinnier.
too.
Yeah, because I feel like he gave me, like, more, like, scrawnier vibes. So, like, a Ross Lynch. And then for LaRue, actually, I was thinking, like, Chris Noth, like, Big from Sex and the City. I think he would be, like, just, like, a fun, like, person to do that.
Yeah. So, I've only casted 2, Wren and Jeremy. But for Wren, I was thinking, like, Isla Fisher.
Oh, okay. Oh, should be fun.
And, so, for Jeremy, I said Alexander Ludwig. If you've watched The Hunger Games, it's Cato.
Yes.
And he just has villain vibes all around. Since, Hunger Games has a huge impact on that. I won't see him as anything other than a villain from now on, but yes.
I like it. Those are good. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Just that if you haven't listened to Morbid, a true crime podcast, you should.
Yes. They're available on every platform. Like I said, they've been around for a long time. You can follow them on Instagram, and then you can listen to them anywhere. But I love Morbid. So
yes. Great
great job, Alaina. I think you did great. Give me more. I need to wrap this up for my own personal needs and wants. So our next book after this one is going to be Sunny Disposition by Deanna Gray. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to move over.
Take a little break.
Do some pleasure reading. So that'll be our next book. And you can follow us on Instagram at Booktrospective and always give us feedback, comments, suggestions. Just be nice to us. And I think that's it.
That's it.
All right. Bye.
Bye.